Are you a parent wondering if you're doing right by your kids?
A therapist seeking real-world applications for working with children and their families?
A teacher trying to navigate educating the whole child in today's world?
Then this is the podcast for you.
Hey guys, it's Brigid,
And Jenna.
the teacher.
And the therapist.
Hey.
Hello.
What episode are we on?
23.
23.
Yeah. What are we talking about today?
Oh my gosh, I just realized we did episode 22 and I did not make a single Taylor Swift reference.
Missed opportunity.
Dang it. It's like I'm not even a real Chiefs fan.
Yeah, you're not. You're not. You're not.
Love T Swift. All right, episode 23.
Yeah? What are we talking about?
We are talking about planned ignoring
Love it.
as, I guess, a subcategory of our. We're also talking really about meltdowns
Yes.
and planned ignoring as, is that part of it or not?
Okay. I love it. Yeah, so planned ignoring, what is it? What is planned ignoring? It is exactly what it sounds like. Intentionally not paying attention to a behavior in order to reduce it. So what are your thoughts and opinions on this technique?
This is one of those things that, like, I remember learning about in my education classes,
Mm-hmm.
specifically for, like, inappropriate behaviors in the classroom of kids, like,
Sure.
shouting things out for attention, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to really, as you learned it, it's supposed to be very, like, they're just seeking attention, so you ignore it. You don't give them what they
Don't
want.
give them attention, yeah.
I have mixed emotions about it. I think it can serve a purpose in a certain time and place. But I also am very of the belief that, you know, behavior is communication, etc. And there's a reason that they might be seeking that attention.
Absolutely.
And so you need to do more than just ignore it. You need to figure out what the cause of it is.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's what I think.
Yeah.
What about you?
I agree. I mean, I use it. The first time I heard this term of planned ignoring was when I was working in the hospital, and they were like, "We're ignoring. We're choosing to ignore," and same type of thing. However, in my internship, because I also never really, along the same lines of what you're saying, I never really liked the term attention-seeking behaviors, and in my internship, I heard it called relationship-seeking behaviors, which I
Okay.
really liked a lot better. Of like, yeah, they're seeking it.
A connection.
A connection, exactly. They're seeking, your attention, but for some reason, and like a connection with you. And even if that's, you yelling back or
Right.
whatever. And every behavior has a function. So it's
Right.
like to avoid something. It's like to communicate something. I'm unhappy or I'm hungry or something.
I feel like if you think about it in the simplest terms, all behavior is either to get something or to avoid something. Like,
Sure.
no matter what behavior it is, you're either trying to get something or you're trying to get away from something.
Not have to do something. Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I mean, as the experts would say, when to use planned ignoring is when the behavioral purpose is either to avoid or get attention, which is basically what you're saying is all behavior.
Yes.
But when would be sometimes we don't use it.
Okay, so we definitely don't want to use it for unsafe behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to ignore a child who's, like, about to jump into a fire pit. We're not going to ignore that.
Or hitting their head on the floor, or hitting another child, hitting you.
You're right. It doesn't have to be as extreme.
Yeah,
as jumping into-
exactly. I wanted to give some real lessons.
I happened to glance over at the fireplace and thought, when would I not ignore a child in this room? It's if they were trying to climb into the fireplace.
That would be a good time not to ignore them.
Yes. Obviously, if basic needs are not being met, if they need to be fed or whatever it is, if they need something from you, or if the purpose of the behavior is something other than attention seeking.
Yeah.
Relationship seeking, as you just taught us about.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And I think another differentiation, I differentiate this, meltdowns versus tantrums. I don't know if you differentiate that
Very
for
much
yourself
so,
too.
yeah.
So the way I look at it is like because I use a different term or I differentiate them because to me tantrum has like a negative connotation. I think a lot of times, or at least how I grew up, is that it was framed as like you're having a tantrum in order to get attention, or you're being a brat, or whatever. So that because of that, I often use something more like meltdown.
Okay, so but you would use them interchangeably?
I would not.
Oh,
No.
okay.
I don't
So you
like
would never say the word tantrum?
no.
Oh, see, now I would say tantrum, but to me, a tantrum is separate from a meltdown. Those are
Okay.
2 different behaviors.
Okay.
So, like, in my personal viewpoint,
Mhm.
a tantrum is like your typical kid throwing things in the grocery store because they didn't get what they wanted.
Okay. Sure.
Tantrum. Meltdown, to me, is more when we're involving some type of like neurodivergence, often, not always, but often, and truly like a lack of being able to regulate.
Regulate their emotions.
And it's not necessarily just because I want something. Like, I couldn't just be like, okay, here's the candy that you wanted,
And then they
and now the
stop.
tantrum's done.
Yeah.
Because it goes beyond that. Like, you can no longer have a quick fix. It's a true emotional meltdown.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So that's how I look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I just don't like the I know, Brigid, you've heard me say this before. There's no such thing as bad kids, and I just don't think that I don't know. I think maybe because of the way that the word tantrum has been used, I don't like it because it tends to have a negative connotation, or like it used to, And so
Mhm.
I feel like it's just like left over. But yeah, no, I'm trying to think like what words I would use with clients. Oftentimes, like when I'm writing my notes or something, I'll describe it as an outburst. If parents say they
Yes.
get angry or they started throwing things, I describe it more of as like an outburst or an episode. I typically don't say tantrum, but
Okay. No, yeah, I would definitely say, like, if my child was in the grocery store screaming, I would call it a tantrum, personally.
mhm.
But I think outburst is a good,
Yeah.
because it's also, I think a tantrum can be shorter lasting
Mhm.
than a meltdown.
Yes.
To me, a full meltdown
Is like
is gonna be long term,
right. Right.
and yeah.
Yeah.
I know, like,
Definitely.
a big thing in my head of when I use planned ignoring is specifically around things like, can we do this? Like, questions that my kids are asking me, like,
Mhm.
can I have a snack? Can we go to the park? Can we whatever? And I'm like, I've already answered this,
Okay.
and I've had this
Yes.
conversation,
We've
and I will not be talking about this again. And so
Yeah.
you can talk at me all you want, and I am not engaging in this conversation.
I've already answered you. No, we're not
That
going to the park.
that is a big time that I use
Yep.
planned ignoring,
That
because
makes sense.
I'm not carrying on this. I'm not having the because we're not doing it or whatever.
The
Although,
back and forth of like, but
oh,
why?
okay, I love my children dearly, but I have taught them too well that I will generally give them reasons or explanations for things.
So then they want them.
Because the other day, Jay was asking me something, if we could do something. And I said, no. And I was crabby and not wanting to engage in conversation. And he was like, but why? And I was like, because.
Just because why? Yeah, just because
I just
you're
literally,
not.
all I said was because. And I was like, I didn't want to carry on this conversation. And he just like looked at me and so calmly, he was like, but that's not a reason. He's like, because it's not a reason. And I was like,
You're correct.
oh, and so I was like, because, and then like said whatever the reason was. But I was like, you are so right. But I am so irritated.
I've taught them too well.
Oh my gosh. And it was like it was not unreasonable for him to be like, okay, but
Why?
because I'm pretty
why
sure it was
not?
about, can
Yeah.
we go to the park? And at the time, like, we had already talked about it or whatever. And he was like, okay, why is the answer no? Now he wasn't trying to be disrespectful. He
Mhm.
truly wanted to know,
Like why?
why.
Why can't we?
And so when I gave him the because, he was like,
That's not a
I
reason.
can't work with that because he doesn't understand.
Mhm.
Like, truly, he's like, that's not a reason. I can't comprehend why you're actually saying no and understand it.
Yeah.
So all I had to do was say, because the playground's covered in snow or whatever,
Whatever it
whatever the
was.
simple reason was. And it took me 2 extra seconds to actually give the reason. And so, yeah, it was worth it. But I was like, ugh, you're spoiled. Like, when I was a kid, it was because I said so.
Right, exactly. You're raising emotionally intelligent children.
I'm raising emotionally exhausting children.
There you go, SEL. I love it.
Anyway, what on earth were we talking about?
Planned ignoring.
Right.
So we talked about when to use it, when not to use it. How do you use it? And how do you stop?
Mhm.
Because obviously you're not just gonna, like, ignore the child forever.
Right.
It has to come to an end at some point.
Right.
So, how to use it / when to stop. You wanna start giving labeled praise, as we talked about last session.
Love it.
Last session?
Last session.
Like a
You guys are
therapist.
all officially Jenna's clients
Like
now.
I'm supposed to know, my lawyer said that we need to specify that is
That you are actually not receiving professional
yes,
advice.
this is not medical advice, nor does this constitute a client-therapist relationship. But, as we talked about last episode, give labeled praise when the behavior stops or the expected behavior begins. So something that I guess this could go along the lines of like a tantrum. I could see this qualified as it because we talked earlier. It's when they're trying to get attention and or avoid something.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're trying to avoid something, the example that comes to my mind is like they don't want to. You're leaving the house and they won't put their shoes on. Right? They're avoiding leaving. They don't want to
Mm-hmm.
leave. They want to keep playing. They want to do whatever. And so, yes, I could see a child that's like, but I don't want to go. I don't want to go. You might plan. You might plan to ignore that,
Mm-hmm.
which it could become a tantrum if they're like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going. So you give attention when the behavior stops, or you give labeled praise when the expected behavior begins. Plan ahead and try to target one at a time, because obviously you don't want to be, again, then you'd be, kids have behaviors all the time. Everyone has behaviors all the time. You'd be ignoring everything. So you always want to try to extinguish one unexpected behavior at a time and have a plan. That's the plan part of it, is ahead of time.
Right.
Like if
you know that you're gonna ignore this behavior.
If they're throwing themselves on the floor, that's something that we ignore. Or if they're, walking on the couch and they're not unsafe but they're just doing it to quote unquote get attention or get a reaction out of you, then we're just going to ignore that, because it helps consistency for the child, because they know whenever I do this, it's going to be ignored. B, consistency among caregivers, because if it's all the grownups can be on the same page of like, hey, we ignore when he does this. Okay.
Planned ignoring is also something that can be very freeing as the caregiver in a situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are constantly having to, like you said, they're walking on the couch or whatever, and if you're constantly like having to say it,
Get off the couch. Yeah.
then you're automatically starting to get more frustrated and you're getting more irritated with them.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're angry, and now the situation is going to start spiraling.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're just shut it down and ignore it from the beginning, then you're stifling
calmer.
your emotional reaction as well.
And probably you're not giving them what they want, so they're not going to,
Right.
be interested anyway. So, okay. So if we should not use planned ignoring for meltdowns, how do we handle them?
How do we handle meltdowns? All right. Meltdowns are tricky. Okay. Mm-hmm. Our number one thing is going to be that it's never going to be the same every time. So
the meltdown and or the how.
Sorry about it. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And nor will it be the same for every child.
Yeah.
I think specifically of like some children, when they're in that moment, are going to be craving touch.
Yeah, they want
and hugs
close.
And pressure. And some kids will absolutely want you nowhere near them. So, and obviously I say kids, but like also as adults, we're the same way when we're upset.
We can melt down.
Some people want hugs, and some people are like, do not touch me. I need to be by myself to sort this out. And so some of it is going to be as you learn your child, your student, your client, how do they want me to handle this?
Sure.
Do they want me?
They like personal space, or do they like a hug?
Yeah. So I've mentioned this before, but there's a website called he'sextraordinary.com, and I love it, and it's beautiful, and I print out their things and hang them in my classroom. But they have a whole list of like de-escalation strategies.
Okay.
So how are we going to handle these meltdowns? I'm not going to go through all of them. There's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest ones that I find works is use a distraction.
Yeah, I use that a lot.
A lot of the time we can...
Especially like with the really young kids.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to be able to reason with them. That's maybe one big do not is like,
right.
You're not going to reason with them. You're not going to...
And not even just the younger ones for that, but if
anyone
in a meltdown state, will not be reasoned with.
Yeah, it doesn't. You're not being rational. You're acting out of emotion.
So especially for those younger ones, just using a distraction. Is it Okay, let's have an alternative plan.
Let's do
you want to
this.
go do this? Do you want to do that? I know for one of my kiddos, my husband and I laugh about it, but almost every time a surefire way to like end a meltdown for him is to put the TV on.
Mm,
Like that's just such a calming effect for him that
sure.
he'll just
Stop.
yep. And I mean he can go for a very long time being very upset, and like the amount of times I can picture us like sitting on the couch and trying to work through these moments.
Yeah.
And like to the point where he'll finally look at me and be like, "Can we just turn the TV on now?"
Your husband or the child?
No.
The
Child. He'll look at me and be like, "Can we just turn the TV on?" Like he's like, "I'm done trying to talk about these
talking about my
things.
feelings.
I don't want deep breaths anymore. Like I'm done."
I need to watch TV.
So yes.
A kid who knows what he needs.
Yes. So
love
whatever
it.
it is. And then oftentimes I know you've probably been to places where if there's a lot of kids around, you've got like a zoo or a children's museum or whatever, they'll have a quiet room or a sensory room.
Yep.
Decreasing that sensory stimulation is a wonderful one.
Yep. Turn the lights off.
Yes. Turn the lights off. If there's noise, turn the noise off. If they're in a space with a lot of people, removing them.
And sometimes that means like you picking them up and moving them.
Yes.
You know, we know. I mean, meltdowns look like sometimes throwing yourself on the floor. And so if you're in either out in public or you're at someone's house and there's a bunch of people, you know, you're not necessarily going to clear the room for them. So I'm going to pick you up and we're going to go into the bedroom to take a break or whatever. I'm going to take you into this next room, tell them what you're doing, and then you physically pick them up.
Yes. Avoiding making demands is another big one. You're not going to be able to demand them to do anything.
Yeah.
So just like, you need to stop, or you need to put your shoes on, or you need to stop crying. Stop crying. Stop crying. I feel like we hear and say that all the time. Stop crying. Stop crying.
Whining. Stop crying.
Stop whining is one that I'm so guilty of saying. Stop whining. My kids are whiners. Anyway, but like, they truly are not just, if it's a true meltdown to me, they're not going to be able to just turn that off.
Sure. Absolutely.
But yeah, those demands, don't give demands. What else are we talking about? I don't know. Are there any that stick out to you as good?
So one thing that I've heard, and I really like this, it kind of goes along the lines of like reducing stimulation or like taking them into a calmer environment, is you want to like physically contain it. So for example, if your child is outside, you're in the backyard and they start having a meltdown, bring them inside, bring them in like not a totally enclosed room, but like their bedroom. Not like if like in my house, we have a very like open concept downstairs. So it kind of, the kitchen flows into the family room that flows into the hallway. And the expert that was talking about it, Dr. Becky at Good Inside, was saying it's like their meltdown will take up the space that they're in.
Okay.
So if they're in like, okay, so I'm going to pick you up now and take you to your bedroom. I'm going to stay here with you. If they don't like the physical touch, then like you shut the door. You're like, I'm right here. I'm staying right here, sitting by the door, whatever. But taking them into like a physically smaller place, as long as it's not too small and like what's the word?
Claustrophobia?
Claustrophobic, yeah.
I'm sorry. You, the therapist, should know the phobias,
I know,
okay?
I'm sorry. Let's do a whole episode on just like names of phobias.
All the phobias.
We'll have to like be like, guess what this one is.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so fun.
I'm in for it. Let's do it.
I have a phobia that no one believes me is real until I like Google it, and I'm like, this is a real phobia.
Is it the holes?
Yes! Oh my gosh. Yes, it is.
Yep, it's a thing.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, we're not in our phobia episode yet. Some things that may or may not work is like the deep breathing, like we talked about.
Yes. Know your kid.
I have a student that previously has been like, this is dumb. And he's like, I'm not doing this. Like, he just will be like, I'm not breathing. And I'm like,
I'm not breathing.
Yeah. That's what he said to me one time. I'm not breathing. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, we're not gonna reason with you or argue about.
Right. We're gonna say okay, and we're gonna move on from
right.
that.
We're not gonna be like, well, just sustain life.
We always do the breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. And one of the ways we do it in the classroom, and I'm sure you've heard this too, is that like either you smell a flower, or a lot of the times we'll do smell a birthday cake, because you can use those little tiny things of Play-Doh I love these. I have one with me all the time, no matter what. Not for this, just because I have them. But if you take it and put a candle in it, like a physical candle, it literally looks like a
birthday
cake with a candle in it. And so that visual representation of it is a good way for them to smell the candle, blow out your birthday cake. Or
nope. Other way. Smell the cake, blow out your birthday candle.
I feel like Willy Wonka. Strike that. Reverse it. Just smell the cake, blow out the candle. But it's like when it's visually there in front of them, it makes it easier.
Makes it somewhat like tangible.
Yeah. So that's a good one. Silence is one, which is going to be that like planned ignoring, as in if they're saying, you're stupid, I hate you. You don't need to respond to that.
Right.
That does not require a response from you. So don't respond. Something big too is not shouting. If they're being loud and they're screaming, you don't need
You're trying to match their energy.
Yeah, you don't need to be shouting over top of their tantrum. They're not going to hear you anyway. So just wait till that calms down.
Yeah, their reasoning brain's not online. And I think and this is similar to things we've talked about before, but like getting down on the child's level. Like, if you put yourself in their shoes, this person is yelling, they're towering over you. Like,
Especially because a lot of the times in a meltdown, a child will be down like physically.
Yes.
And so if you are still standing, it's just even a bigger discrepancy.
Yeah. If it's a young child, they're literally down, they're laying down. I mean, I've seen meltdowns specifically usually with neurodivergence. A lot of autistic folks, a lot of autistic kids, even adults, where like they will be on the ground and literally somebody, whoever is like the regulated person with them or the adult, will lay on the ground next to them, like lay on their back next to them to just kind of match them where they're at. So,
and
absolutely.
You can do that. Like if it's a child who doesn't like that physical touch, you can
just
be close enough that you could reach out and touch them, but you don't need to touch them.
Absolutely. Or like the example of, like I said, when you go into the bedroom or whatever room it is, you can just sit there, and they might be, that's another, and this is kind of nuanced, but that's another, like, using the quote unquote planned ignoring is like, get out, I hate you, get out of here, get out of here. We do want to respect their personal space, but you can also stay nearby because they're just super escalated and they're you're a stable, well, ideally, you're a stable, calm force right then. So
also that's fascinating to me about that the tantrum or the meltdown or whatever will take up the space that it's in. Because I have always found the most calming place to be in my house is the bathroom with the shower running. I'm not in the shower. I have no intention of getting in the shower. But standing in the bathroom with the shower running,
you're like blocking out
is like so comforting to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like that, and for some reason I've never thought to like take my child in there when they're having a moment. But I might have to try that because like it's warm, it's steamy.
Yep.
The sound is lovely. It's a small room.
Yep.
Like I will do that for myself when I'm upset. So like I should really do that for my kids.
Let's test it on the kids.
Yes, I love doing my science experiments on my children. Not with them, on them.
On them. I love a good psych experiment on kids.
Okay, how about an episode where we just perform different psychological experiments on my children?
On your children?
On my children.
I'm in. I am
like in. The one with the marshmallows?
We're going to do the marshmallows. We're going to do the graham cracker one where you break it in half. We're going to do the glass of water.
Wait, what's the glass of water one?
The water, it's like you have like a shorter and a taller glass, and you say like which one has more, and then they answer, and then you pour it in front of them so that they know it's the same amount, but based on the volume, whatever one looks higher, they're going to say.
Right.
That one has more, even when they see you pour the same amount in.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And the graham cracker one and everything.
The graham cracker one's similar, isn't it? Like they have two, so they have more.
Right. Even if when they watch you break it in half, it's still like he has two and I only have one, so that's not fair.
All right. I'm excited for this episode.
All right, we've
now planned phobias and experiments on my children. Love it.
Maybe we'll give T and J some new phobias.
I don't think they... Well, at least we know how to cure them now. Well, no, these are not meltdowns.
We'll have to do the phobia one first, just in case we need tips.
Did you know that the reflection of your chandelier looks like a pineapple on your ceiling?
It does. It does.
So these are things that I just now ADHD noticed in Jenna's house. Sorry, y'all.
Yep.
All right. Do we have anything else we need to say
I
about
think so.
meltdowns?
I think we can just ignore the rest.
Haha,
Good done.
ignore it. All right. We'll ignore you next time.
Bye.